Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Android beginner Android training CodeCamp 3.0. My name is Keith Control, as you all know. So yeah, in our last class, we did an introduction into the Android ecosystem. We got to learn, about Android, what it is, the components that makes up the whole Android system, right? And we also, kind of did a brief, rundown on the Android Studio, right? And some of the things, basic things that you need to know. So we're going to actually go straight into it. Today we're going to be looking at views, right? I don't have a slide today because we're going to just do hands-on. So we're going to be looking at views, talk about view groups, right? And then just build a basic, application. Nothing too difficult, right? Nothing too easy, nothing too hard, right? So that's that. Okay. So first things first, we'll talk about views and we'll talk about view groups and also talk about layouts, right? So basically, we'll talk about views, right? Views are basically just your elements, right? Like your text, right? It's text is a view, your button, right? Or they are all called views, right? They're just your basic elements you actually make use of in building your UI, right? Then if we talk about view groups, just from the name, view groups, that means a group of views, right? Basically a group of what views, because these elements, these views are arranged. So your view groups kind of help you to what arrange your views. They house the views, which, like we said, a text, an image, a button. So when you look at applications, right? So you just think of it as one big container, and then you're placing these views in it, right? Your text view, your image, your buttons, all those stuff, you're placing them in that what container. But you have to place them, they have to be arranged, they have to be properly aligned, right? So that's basically what view groups are, of course. So they are just view groups is just a container. I can just see it as a container that houses your what views, right? So we're going to look at basically when it comes to view groups, we have three basically we're going to be talking about, right? But as far as implementation goes, we'll focus on one majorly, which is the most which is widely used and recommended by Android and by Google, right? So we have linear layout, which is a view group, right? So just think of linear. When we talk about linear, a straight line. So since we said a view group is like a container that houses your views, it helps you arrange your views, right? So when you look at linear layouts as a view group, it means that the elements are arranged in a linear format, right? So linear, basically, it's either horizontally or vertically. That's linear layout. That's as simple as that, right? Relative layout is the next one that arranges views in relation to another, right? Relative to another. So what we'll talk about that, you could say probably you have a view in a particular spot, right? Then you can place the next view to the right of another view, right? That means there's a relationship to the top of another view, to the left side, to the bottom of the views, right? So that's a relative layout. But we'll concentrate more on using the constraint layout. Constraint layout is actually a very powerful layout. It kind of it combines, the linear layout, the relative layout, and it helps you to build more complex UIs, right? So that's what we're going to actually make use of. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use linear layout. We'll probably just test that out, but we're going to focus everything we're going to be building as far as UI is concerned, right? We're going to be using the constraints what layouts, because I kind of want you guys to, learn the most things that really, kind of following the trend, right? And the best practices, right? Okay, um, so let's just go through our IDE, right? I think we've talked about a few of these things, right? So we've talked about the manifest folder, right? Contains informations, permissions, and a lot of that. So, but today, like I said, we're going to be talking about just we're going to be looking at views, view groups, layouts, and we're going to learn how to build a basic UI. Remember, UI is what user interface. So we're going to be going to our layout folder. So we talked about the rest folder, which is the resources folder, right? Where you have your drawables, right? All these things, I think we talked about it. So your layout folder is where you get to have what's the files for your layouts, because remember we also talked about activities, right? Which is your UI, right? Activities, which are classes, right? Now your UI, right, are actually built, or you actually code them, right, or build them or design them in the layout what file, right? And we have, when you create your project by default, it gives you a main activity, right? So I remember saying in the last class, right, your main activity, just think of it like your main function when you are working with Kotlin, right? So this is more like your entry point. This is like your launcher. So when when you want to launch your application, it goes to the main activity first, right? And the reason is because it's in the main activity that we have what we call the launcher intent. I think I showed that in the last class. We have the launcher intent. Okay, let me just quickly open that up. Yeah, so you can see we have this intent filter, right? So this can actually be in any other activity, right? It must not be. You can decide to create your own activity that will be your launcher activity, right? But this is just more like a default, right? Based on the by using the template, okay? And then so every activity, right, that you create, well, I would, yeah, comes with what, a layout, because the activity is going to just contain instructions, right? The layout file contains the UI, right? So you draw the UI in the layout file, right? Then in your activity class, that's where you now define what functions, methods, and interactions, right? That should, happen whenever something is actually, when a particular element is clicked or something, right? So we're going to just go straight to the activity underscore main.xml, right? And then let's see if we can do a few things, just some few play around. So, but when you get here, first things first, let's see if we can just do a brief rundown of a few things we are seeing here. So if we look at this part, let me see if I can get my annotate. Okay, good. So if you look at this part, right, the palette, right? So here, right, you just have your like views, layouts, things you need to actually design your UI, right? Your text views, your buttons, widgets, layout, containers, helpers, and a lot of these things, right? Let me just quickly close that so we can, yeah. So text, you have a lot of text formats here, plain text, password text. They are all what's text, and it's a text view. So remember, I said these are views, and because a view actually is a class, right? We've talked about class that has methods and everything. So, when you basically create a text, you're basically creating an instance of what's the view class. So a text view is actually an instance of the view class, right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, we have buttons. We have different types of buttons. We have the image button, chip group, chip. We'll get to use these guys. Radio group, toggle button, switch, floating action button. Of course, we have widgets, the image view and web view, a lot of things, right? You can just check this out. Now, of course, layouts, you can see we have constraints layouts, like we talked about. A linear layout, you can see in bracket horizontal. So it has a horizontal orientation, means that the elements inside the linear layout will be arranged in a linear format, but horizontally, right? So one next to the other. And then you can also change the orientation to vertical. So it's just going to be top to bottom. So we have frame layouts, table layouts, and a lot of other stuff. So you have containers, right? Your recycler view, scroll view, spinner, and a lot of things. Card view, we get to use a lot of these things. We have helpers, right? To use a lot of these, especially when we get into building complex UIs, right? Okay, so of course you have Google, stuff you can use like the add view, or probably you're building an application that has to do with a map. You can just use the map view. And then there's some legacy layouts, legacy templates or stuff that that's been there, right? Like list view. It's actually legacy. It's kind of it's kind of a long time ago, right? So no, I would say it's not used. I'll kind of say it's barely used, right? Because nowadays, as far as list is concerned, we want to use something that's much more dynamic, and that's why we make use of recycler view, but we'll learn about that when the time comes. So that's basically your palette, right? It just contains more like elements and things you need to build your UI. Now when you look at this other parts, we have the components tree. So basically what this component tree just shows you, it kind of gives you a hierarchy of what's your elements, every element you're using, every view you're making use of to build your UI. It kind of just shows you, that in a hierarchy. Like if you see here is the root view, right? The root called the constraint layout. So the constraint layout is the root, and then you can see we have a text view here, which is also what we have here, right? So, but we'll actually take that out and start from scratch so you get to see it. What else am I going to show you? Okay, so here we have what we call the attributes pane, right? So every view has an attribute, right? Just like, so like I said, think of it as a class, right? Where you define properties and methods, right? So every view has an attribute. Basically, it means that you can customize that view to behave in a way you want it to behave, right? So like, for example, a text view, one attribute of a text view is color, means you can change the text color, right? One attribute is also size, means you can change the size, the fonts, a lot of things, the width, the height, and a lot of things. So that's basically what attributes are. So when you click on a view, which is very important, you click on that view or element, whatever, then you get to see the attributes, for that. Like if I just click out, right? So by default, it's on the constraint layout, but when I click on the text view, right, I'll get to now see, attributes that can be called on that particular text view, right? So currently we are actually by default on the design mode, right? Here at the top right here, we're actually on the design mode, right? So we're just going to be doing some drag and drop. That's how we're going to be building our UI right now. Just drag and drop. Now, another way to build the UI is getting to use what we call the XML, right? Like you're coding it out, and we'll probably just do that in the next class right here. We'll do that in the next class. But for today, we're going to just do some basic drag and drop, right? And maybe I might just get into XML to just show you, but basic drag and drop. Okay, here you can actually split. So splitting this basically just shows you, the code representation, the XML representation of whatever you're doing here, right? You can see currently the roots, if you look at the components tree here, we have the roots as the constraint layout, and then we have a text view. So when you split, you get to see the XML part, how it looks. So you can see the root is a constraint layout, and this is the text view. So just this text view being placed here, this is the code that is generated. So this is this is basically the attributes of this text, right? This text view. But we'll get to that later. Or you can decide to just focus, and you're just so good at what you do, you don't need a preview, you just write your code directly. Good for you, right? Okay, so back to design mode. What else? A lot of things you probably get to figure it out yourself, right? But let's see what else. Okay, so for this eye icon here, you can show all your constraints, show margins, live rendering, and a lot of stuff. Just something to play around with, right? So here, you can decide to, we're currently on design mode. You can decide to switch to blueprint. So here you're basically just seeing the blueprints. You know what the blueprint is. You're not seeing the actual, stuff you're doing, but you're just seeing like a blueprint of it. So that's that. You can switch that. You can actually decide to see both of them, right? Or just focus on one. So this actually is just your system UI. You can actually switch to dark mode and make your design, or you can switch to not night. But of course, you should first of all do not night. Don't bring your dark mode. Some of you that have a thing for dark mode, you now decide to just switch. You should understand that not everyone uses dark mode, right? But we'll learn I'll show you how to design, right, in such a way that you can also design a dark mode of it just easily, right? I'll show you how to do all that. Okay. So please, at any point you probably can't hear me clearly, or you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll actually get to you. Okay, so I think that's actually a good intro, right? So let me clear this whole drawings I've done here. Okay, so let's head into testing this out, right? So first of all, I'm going to just delete this. And then so currently we have what we call a constraint layout, right? So, but let me just for the sake of we knowing what this is about, right? I want to change. So, let me change this constraint layout, which is our root, right? Let me change it to convert it to a linear layout. Just going to change that, right? So this is a linear layout, right? And you can, I just want to show you, about this layouts, right? So you get to know you can actually use any of them, right? So I'm just going to go to my text. So I want to just design something, right? So let me get a text view. So drag and drop, right? So I'll just click on this on the text here, click and then press and hold and then drag. So I'm just going to drop it anywhere. So you get to see this is the text view, right? Let me zoom in a bit. This is it, right? So assuming I want to drag another one, you can see this is another one. Assuming I want to drag another one, I'm just dropping it anywhere. So it's not like, so you can see. So what is it doing? Each element is just arranged in a linear format, but the orientation here you can see from this. If I click on this guy, remember when you click on a particular layout or element, you then see attributes with respect to that, right? So here in our attributes pane, you can actually just search for what you're looking for or play around, right? If you know what you're looking for, right? So there's a property called orientation, right? So this orientation kind of guides the linear layout, right, on how to arrange its views, right? Arrange whatever is being placed inside. Should it arrange it in a horizontal format, right, which is from left to right, or a vertical format? So currently by default, it's actually a horizontal. But when I switch to vertical, right, you can see they are all what now arranged in a vertical what format, right? So let me also use that to explain a few things. Now, so that's that. Okay, let me just switch from that to let's convert the view to a relative layout. So if I convert it to a relative layout, you see we have 3 text views that we actually put here, but you're just seeing only one, right? If I click on it and try to drag it out, you see it just goes back there, right? So we have just one. So what's happening here? So relative layout, like I said, it arranges these views in relation to something. So there's a relationship. So it's either you are by my left-hand side or at my right-hand side or in front of me or behind me. But of course, from Android perspective, left, we call left start, we call right end. Then we have top and then we have what bottom, right? So we can arrange these views, right, with respect to one another, okay? So how do we do that, right? Okay, so let me just do something. First of all, I can just say, let me clear this. So before you're able to, create that relationship, you first of all need to give your text views an ID, right? Very important. Now, by default, they actually have an ID. Like this one has an ID of text view. This second one has an ID of text view 2. This third one has an ID of text view 3. So what the ID is just like an identifier, a name, because I cannot create a relationship with something that is not named. Okay, there's no relationship if I don't even know you, right? If we don't, have you ever just walked across the street and someone just comes up to you and says, hey, how are you doing? And starts acting all familiar with you and you have no idea who the person is. You guys cannot flow, right? Because there is no relationship. You don't even know the person's name, right? So that's how important identity is. So the ID concept, right, also applies here. Every view needs an ID. If you are going to do something with that element, that view, if there's going to be a form of interaction, you have to give it an identity, an identifier. Okay, take note of that. So so let's see. Okay, from a relative layout point of view, this is actually, I prefer using the code aspects to it, but we actually we can do something like this. Align. So when I use the word, when I search align, I just get to see things that has to do with that search that has that word in it. So we use this align. We have a lot of we have align bottom here, right? You can see if you just hover on it, you can see align bottom. So what does this do? It makes the bottom edge, if you want to read that, of this view match the bottom edge of the given view ID. So I can say, okay, fine, I'm on text view 3 right here. Okay, so I want it to be aligned to, let's say, the right that is end, which is this one, of what? So you can see, I want to choose right of what, right? So you can see an ID. It's pointing to the first or the second one. So if I say the second one, right? So I'm aligning the end. So instead, no, let's not align the end. Let's align the left side of it, which is here, right? So to the, okay, let's do that. So, okay. So you may not show now, but of course we just have to do. So another thing I could just do, let me just use this one. This one you actually just see it. So let's see what's this, align parents bottom. So whenever you hear parents, so you see when I just set that to true, what happens? You get to see, let me scroll up. So you see this text view just, kind of just comes down to this place, right? Because I enabled the align parents bottom. I said true. So what does it mean? So the parent is the root layout. Take note of that, right? The parent is the root layout. So when I say align parent bottom, means go to the bottom of the parent and stay there. Just stay there. That's why I set it to true, right? This other one, align parent end. If I send it to true, so end is right, start is left, end is right. So if I set that to true, you can see there's this pointer that drags down. I'll just show you when we get to constraint layout, right? So that's just certain ways you can play around, because the idea is this: you need to be able to arrange your views, right? You need to be able to arrange it. So that's just relatively, I'm not really going to stay there much. So, but let's go to constraint layouts and then you understand this more. So constraint layouts, right? So this is actually this is the most powerful layouts to actually use, right? So let me show you something. So because whenever you're designing, whenever you're creating your UI, you need to also understand a few things. Now, from the word constraint layout, right? For the word constraints, okay? You know what it means to constrain something or somebody, right? You're trying to keep the person at a particular position, right? You're trying to keep the person at a particular position. So the constraint layout, what it does is that it constrains its views, right? It constrains its views. Now, so think of this is how I like to paint the constraint layout. So just think about this, right? Think about you're just in the middle of two people. One person is drawing your right hand, another person is drawing your left hand. Now, if both of them are giving equal force, you notice that you're just at that place. Whoever draws you more, like whoever exerts more pressure, you tend to follow that person, right? So, but if both of them are applying the same, the same pressure, right? You just be at that spot, right? You'll be at that spot. You won't move until one person's own is greater, then you tilt towards that. So that's basically what constraint layout is. In fact, think of I know something. So just think of constraint layout as maybe if it's happened to you when you were in primary school and then you came very late or you failed and they told two students to hold your hand while they flog you, right? There are certain persons that when they hold you, you cannot move and they are flogging the hell out of you. So what are they doing? They are constraining you so you can receive what is being given, right? That's constraining you. So that's basically the idea of what constraints what layout. So it keeps views there. Now, so let me just take this out. So what happens when I drag a view into my constraint layout? Remember, the constraint layout is now the root, is like the container. So what happens when I drag a text view down? So you notice it stays here. Now you would think that, okay, if I place it here, when I run this application, right, it will be here. But no, that's not true. So let me actually now you can notice that we have this red dot. So that's an error here. So you can see it says missing constraints in constraints layout. So click badge for details. So when I'll click on this, and then you can see it shows me this missing constraints error. When I click on it, you see it gives you this extra information. It says this view is not constrained. It only has design time positions. So it means that whatever you're seeing, you're only seeing it in design time at the time of you designing it. He said, but it will jump to coordinate 0,0 at runtime unless you add constraints. So let me show you guys, right? So before before now, right, I had just run the empty application, right? I just run it so that I'll have so I won't have to just do it again. So I'm going to share my screen how it was before, right? When you run it by default, right? When you run it by default, how does it actually show? So this is what we have, right? By the way, if you want to run your application, you just click, there's a play button here. I'd already clicked it before, but you see a play button here, right? And use that to run your application to test it, right? But after that, you can decide to either run it or probably just apply whatever changes. So what this other button applies changes and restarts your activity. So, but first of all, let me show you how it looks like when you just click and run the application the first time. So this is how it looks like. So you see the hello world is in the middle, right? But I'm going to just click run, right, on currently. Remember what we just did, right, before we got here? I just dragged the text view and dropped it at the center, right? But it told us that, look, that place you're keeping it is just design time. Yeah, when you run it, it will jump to 0, 0. Now that 0, 0 coordinate is the top left. So I'm just going to run this, click apply, right? And then it will, not should, will. It's currently running though. So the hello world, you notice that the hello world will now go to the top left. It goes to the top left because we have not constrained it. So think of it like you just think of, let's say you have a bowl, right? Think of it like you have a bowl and then you just place, so you can see it just went to the top left, right? You can see we have in our text, we just went to the top left where you have the my application, right? So that's basically that. So but of course we would want that because this is a runtime. This is definitely not what we actually want. So how do we constrain it, right? How do we constrain it? So let's get back to our Android Studio. Okay, so let's constrain this now. Let's constrain this. Oh, sorry. Let's constrain this. So in helping you constrain, right, there are 4 places you can, 4 points. It's either the top, the bottom, the start, which is the left, and end, which is the right. Okay, those are the 4 points you can constrain. You can add constraint. So I'm just going to show you. There are like two ways basically. Well, actually 3 if you're considering coding it. So if you come to the right hand side of this attribute, you can see the constraints widget here in this layout section, because in your attributes you have declared attributes. Declared attributes are attributes that are declared when you create that, or when you create that instance of your text view, right? So when we just dragged it, they are declared attributes by default. So declared attributes basically are just like, when you create a class and you give it, the class itself has a constructor. So when you're creating an instance, you're actually giving it those constructor values. So just the same idea. So in our layout section, so you can see this here, you can see if I hover on it, you have this create top constraints. So what does this mean? Let's something, just there be a constraint from the word top. This is what the left constraint, which is start, bottom, and then right. So when I click on this top constraint, you can see, first of all, what do you notice? This small circle here now is now filled. Here is just a circle, just a stroke kind of thingy, but here it's now what's filled blue. And then you can see that there's a straight line that goes to the top. So what's this 295? This 295 is basically the distance, right? The margin. Okay, we'll learn about margin and padding. So margin, basically the distance from the view from this point to top of the parent, which is the constraint layout, right? Okay, so we can also do a left constraint. When I click on this, the same thing, and I click on this right, and then click on this left bottom. So this has constrained everything. So when I run this at this exact point, which I'm going to just run now, I'm going to click on run. So remember how it was still at the top left, right? It was still at the top left. So let me show you. Let's see if it actually, if it will move back to, where it should be. So just switching, right? And then let me just run this. I believe you can see the app on my phone. Okay, so let me just apply changes, right? So let's see if it will move from here, which is where it was before we added the constraint, to somewhere, around here, right? So you can see it actually moved. So it's not actually the center because it wasn't actually centered, right? So that's what constraint does. So no matter what happens, right, that is going to be the position of this text view. Okay, that's going to be the position of the text view. Okay, so take note of that. Okay, let's get back to our code. Let's get back to our code. Okay, so now, of course, it's not, you don't really need to. So as far as constraint layout goes, right, you must have either a top or bottom constraint and a left or right constraint. You must have at least one from left or right and one of top to bottom to actually take out that error. Like if I just click on this, this will just delete the bottom constraint. Let me just delete everything just by clicking this small circle here. So you can see there's this error here, right? You can see this red line. You can also see this red, this a missing constraint. So if I go to my, if I click on the text view and then click here, so top constraints is still giving me this red line here, meaning that there's an error, right? You can see, so, but it also shows you that you've added the top of parent. So this is one thing you need to be able to read because when we get to the XML. So what are we saying? We have constrained this text view, the top of this text view, right, to the top of the parents, and the parents is the constraint layout. So so let's see. If I add a left constraint, you can see now we don't have that error again. So you must have either of them. Either you have top left, top right, or you have bottom left, bottom right. Okay, it's very important you have one of either of them, right? Very, very important. You can't just have, like, for example, you can't have top and bottom alone. You still need a horizontal. So you need one of vertical, one of the vertical constraint. It needs to be horizontally or vertically constrained. At least one, either left, right, or top or bottom. Okay. So remember I said these numbers are margins, right? So that's the distance from the parents to the to this text view. So I could decide I want it to be 8. So you can see, right? And then this is 417. I could just make this 0. I don't want that, right? So that's actually that. So one thing I need you to also understand about constraints is this. So if you notice, you now be asking yourself, is the distance from here to this place 8? No, look at the distance here. See it here. If I zoom in a bit, these are our 8, these are margin. But why is it still here? You need to also, that's why I said think of constraint layout as 2 persons dragging you. So there's a top and a bottom constraint, right? So it's a bit just about 8 margin, just 8, right? The margin is just 8. So that's why there's just that slight. So if two people apply the same pressure, you kind of be in the middle, right? So sometimes you may want to just decide to, okay, let's see, I'll just take out this. So you see, if I take out the bottom, you can now, if I now decide to make this a, let's say 36, you can now see the effect of margin. Probably I add the left, right, and decide to make this 36 also. You can see the effect of margin, right? So, but when you add constraints to both sides, right, it will basically place it in the middle, right? But except you have a margin or a margin left or right, dependent on which one is greater, it will tilt towards that side. Okay, so I think that's a lot. I've just been trying to explain the whole how to constrain your views, right? So, and we have made use of this, right? So this is just kind of introductory, right? Now, of course, but you can also do it by dragging, right? So I could just close this out. You can also just click here the top and then drag to the top, click and then drag here. That's also a way of constraining it, right? So I'm going to also add here so that it's centered, right? And then you can see as you're doing it, you're seeing you're seeing the effect here. So I'm just going to say I want 48 dp 48. So I think I talked about dp. So it's kind of like the unit of measurement, right? For margins, paddings, talk about that. For your views, right? Distance for the views, density pixels, right? But for text, the size of text, we use SDP, or just something for you to know. Okay, so as part of attributes go, so we have some declared attributes here. So let me just explain these ones. Now, the first one we have is we have this layout width. So layout width means width of the layout. Just it's as simple as that, right? So the layout here that we're talking about is the word text view. So what is the width of the text view? So as far as width is concerned and height, we usually have three options per se. We have match parent, we have wrap content, and then we have match constraints. Now, match parent means that I want, whether if it's to the width, right? I want it to be as wide as the parent is. So it means that it should stretch to touch the words parent. So if I change this to match parent, you can see. So you see the layout itself is now as wide as the parent. Okay. If I say wrap content, right, it means the layout is going to what? Wrap the content. So the layout is going to be as wide as the content is. So the more the content, the wider it is. Then we have what we call the 0dp, which is match what constraints. Means that if there are left and right constraints, I want you to be as wide as the constraints. So if for some reason I didn't have this left right constraints here, I take this out, right? So it's just going to be here. So match constraints just means, look, if I am holding you at this point, let me just get an annotate. So match constraints means if I am holding you here and I'm also holding you here. Match constraints means whatever you're doing, be as wide as from here to here. You not extend to any other place. That's match what constraints. Okay, so that's basically I hope that actually is clear. Okay, so let's look at more properties. Let's now talk about properties, right? So I'm just going to drag this here, right? You can play around with these things. One of the things I like. So first of all, we talked about the width. So same thing with height, right? Same properties, match parent, match constraints, which is 0dp. And then of course we have the what's it called? Wrap content. Okay, so there's let's see. So there's a margin start. So we talked about that, right? So all this margin, so this is the what margin to the what left, from the left, which is start to this. So it's called margin start. This is top margin top. So just take the literal meaning, right? It helps. So we have these other attributes, the ID. I've talked about the ID, right? We can actually change that, and I'll just call it name. I can just say txt underscore name. I'm going to give us some naming conventions, but the same convention you have in Kotlin, you can also apply it here, but I'll still give us some naming conventions. Okay, so the text attributes, so we're just going to click that to refactor it because we already had something there. So the text attribute is to actually give the text view an actual word text. So I'm going to just say, welcome to KodeCamp. So I'm going to click enter. So you can see it actually was changes, right? Okay, so yeah, that's so welcome to what KodeCamp. So let's just add a right constraint right here. I kind of want things to be centered, so I'm just going to I'm going to just say 8dp from the left, just say 8 since right, and 8 from the right, so it's kind of even, right? So from the top I could actually just do the same thing, 8, and then the bottom, add a bottom constraint also, and then I'm just going to say 8. Okay, so that will just center things for me, right? My equal constraints, sorry, 8 here also. equal constraints. So everybody is dragging everybody equally. Okay, so there are other attributes to the text, right? Other attributes, right? You can actually just search for them, or you can decide to take a scroll. But when I was learning, what I usually do, I like to search for things. I'll just type text, and then you see a lot of things about text, right? Things that starts with text, right? So like for example, you see this text color. So I could just click here, right? And then I have a color palette. So I kind of like orange whenever it comes to development, right? So let me just use this, right? Use something a bit darker. Nah, that's too dark. Okay, let's just use this, right? So we have just changed the word attribute, the color, text color attribute, right? We have what we call the text all caps. So you can change this to true. It means that everything should be capital letter. What else do text size? So I'm just going to click on this, and this by default is 14 SP. Let's make it a bit bigger. So I'm not going to say 32 SP. Okay, that's too big. Okay, 24 SP. Okay, that's fine. Okay, text style as also another attribute. So you click, do you want bold? I think I want it to be bold, so I'll apply that. Okay, good. Also theme. Well, theme has to do with text appearance. How do you want the text to appear? And also some of these things, right? You actually test it out, because of course I can't use all the attributes, right? You just have to test some of them out. It's all dependent on what exactly you are doing, right? So that's right. So what else do we want to do? So that's about text view. So I'm going to bring in a lot of things at the same time. So let's just design something, right? So that's how we actually put a text view. The next thing we can actually add is a button. How do we add a button? So I'm just going to go to my palette, click on common, because here you see some common things that you always use. Click on button and then drag it down, right? So constraints, right? Still the power of constraint. Remember, we said you can combine both linear and relative layout. Combines both of them, the power of that. So you can also constrain views in relation to another, right? So instead of, like, for example, this button right now, I kind of want it, so I can say, okay, let the end of this button be constrained to the end of this text. So how do I do that? I'll just come down here. So you notice the cursor, very important. When I hover on it, you notice this guy just kind of, there's like a highlight, a blue highlight on it. Just notice that again. So that means you're there. So I'm just going to click here and then drag, and you can see. So you see that. So I'm constraining the end of this button to the end of the text. I can do that for the start of this button to the start. So you make sure you touch the circle. You can see that equal constraints. And then the top of this button, I could just constrain it to the bottom of the text. Equal constraints. Then for the, maybe I don't want it to be too, it's too close, right? So I'll click on the button to see the attributes that are available. So I already searched text here, but I don't want text. So I want to kind of give it a margin. It's too close, right? It's too close. So I'm going to just have to search for margin, right? So we can search for it, or you can just scroll, but let's just search. So I'll just say margin. So you can see layout margin. So when you click down here, so you can see now when you use the layout margin attributes, right? Your whatever value you give it to apply it to the start, the end, top, and the bottom. But if you want to just apply it to a particular aspect, right? So for example, we just want to apply it to the top of this button. There should be space from the top of the button to the bottom of the text. So I'm just going to kind of hover. What's this? This is margin start. No, we don't need that. This is margin left. No, this is margin top. Good. So I'm just going to click here and say 24 dp. So you see that. So you can see 24. You can see from here to here is 24, right? So, well, for button, of course, there are some text attributes on button. First of all is the attribute called text. So the actual text itself. So this button could be, I could just say login, right? And click enter. So you see that changes the text to login. Okay, so text size, you can increase the text size. So the text all caps, I can just change it to false, right? because I don't want everything to be false. So the the color and all this stuff, right? The text style, you can make it italic if you want. Of course, who would want to use italic? So normal is fine. You definitely want to should use bold, so just normal, right? Okay, so I'm just going to show you a lot of these things. Like I said, you're going to figure it out. You just have to keep playing around with it, trying out attributes and see what the effect is, right? So that's actually how you just add a button, right, and constrain it. But so let me just run this, and then I'll just click on this, apply, and then switch, and let's see what we are doing, right? If we are even, kind of making any headway, right? So I'm just going to switch. So let's see if we have that, if it changes. So sometimes it prompts you to restart and reinstall. So you just follow that prompt. Okay, it's opening up, and then let's see what we have. Okay, nice. Welcome to KodeCamp. So we have a button. Of course, you can't click on it. We have not actually gotten into the part where we have some interactions, right? So, but we'll get there. So we're actually making headway, right? We're making headway. So let's get into something else, right? So that's actually about text, and buttons. So, well, how do you now add an image, right? Okay, so there are, I think, 3 ways, I can add an image, right? So let's see. One of the ways is you could just go to your local, right, your folder, just copy an image and just paste it. But whenever you're doing that, you need to be very, very careful of the name, right? The name, you need to make sure that your file name, it still follows the naming convention, lowercase, right? Don't add, it shouldn't start with a number. In fact, you shouldn't even put numbers, but that's that. So let me just see. Let's see if I can get an image. So you just go to your folder, right? Anywhere you have an image, right? I have one here, so I'm just going. So just copy it, right? So remember, we have our drawables, which is where our folders are. We put drawable data, you put your images and the like. So I'll just right click, and then I'm going to paste, and then make sure that you paste it in the first folder, which is the drawable. I'm going to explain that much later. Then you click OK. So you can see this is the name of the file, KodeCamp space hero, but there should not be space, right? But let me just show you, right? Sometimes when you tell people don't do this, we don't show them the effect of not doing it sometimes, right? It's not every time you can show the effects, but let me just show you. So I'm just going to click OK, right? So if I open up this, you see, so you can actually see that it's actually, there's a red line under it, right? There's a red line under it. That's actually to tell you that something is actually wrong, right? Something is actually wrong. So it's actually the way it is named. So what I'll just do, I'll click on it and then rename it. So you go to refactor, and then you go to rename, or you just use Shift F6. So I'm just going to add everything is in small letters. So I'm just going to add an underscore, right? And then click on refactor. So you can see that error, that line is gone. So we can use this image. So that's one way of adding an image, right? It's actually very easy and fast, right? So that's actually that. Or you can go to resource manager here, right, on this part, and then you can you actually add any resource or any kind of resource you need, whether it's a drawable resource file, an image asset, or you want to import your drawables, right? So you just go straight to where, like for example, it takes you to a path on your desktop. Like for example, it's taking me here, so I can just accept. Let's assume this is what I want to import. I click on OK, and I click on next, and I click on next, right? So you see it added that here. So you can see Atom logo, and then you have KodeCamp Hero. That's also another way to add that. So, okay, but how do we get to use it, right? How do we get to actually use it? So very simple. So it's an image. So because it's an image, we need an image view. So I'm going to click on this image and just drag it down. Let's say here. So when you leave it, so you get to, it shows you the drawables. It basically just tells you to pick a resource. So let's just pick this one that we added first, and then I'm going to say okay, and then we have it here. So of course, you now have the duty, because sometimes you don't have control of the dimensions that they're going to send to you. So you have the duty to, decide how big you want the image to be, right? Okay, so I'm just going to click this, drag it up a bit, and then let's see what we can do about this. So this, I've just dragged it up, but I haven't constrained it, right? So I'm going to give a right constraint, and then top. I'm not going to give a bottom, right? But it's too big, right? The image is too big. So the width, I'm not going to say wrap content. I'm going to give it an actual size. For the width, I could say 100 dp, and the height should also be 100 dp, right? So you can see it becomes this small, but well, let's do 300 dp in 300 dp. Sorry, 300 dp density pixel, and then 300 dp for the height also. Okay, so this is what we have. Give it a margin top. So I could just search for margin. I need just margin top. This should be it. Let's say a 16 dp. Oh, that pushes it out. Okay, so yeah, so that we have that. So one thing I would like to do, you can see this text is the top of this text is constrained to the top of the parents, not necessary. So I'll just click on it and just drag it to the bottom of the image, right? So you see it pushes it down, and the reason it does that is this. If you check our welcome to KodeCamp, right? It's we have a top margin of just okay, so actually don't have a top margin, right? But we have a top and bottom what constraints. That's why. So equal constraints. So if I take out this bottom constraint of the text view, right? You see, it kind of just goes there. Then I can now add here. Actually, you can add your margin here. You can use here. So I'll just say 36 dp. I'll just say 36 since you're making use of this. And that pushes this out. Here, I could just increase this from 16 to also 36. Okay. Right. So yeah, so that's actually how you add an image, right? So that's how you add an image. Now, so there an image comes with a lot of there are a lot of properties, right? There's a scale type property where you can scale your image. You have options like center inside, fit start, fit end, center crop. Now, a lot they want you actually use center crop a lot, right? Well, of course, a lot of times depending on the image, you scale it in a way that you actually in a way that suits you. So let's see how does this look. Everything is just seeming they're just at the top. Well, you can play around with that, right? You can decide to just drag this down, right? So that means more listen. So well, that's just something you can play around with, right? So let's see how it looks. I'm just going to click here to apply changes. Now, at some point, like I said, it may prompt you to reinstall and restart. So just you just do that, right? Especially when you add, there are certain things you add, it's basically just have to build it again, like functions, method, new IDs, and the like. So so let me just switch to my physical device, and then let's see. Yeah, and there we have it, right? There we have it, right? So yeah, that's that, right? That's actually that. That's how we actually build. So this is just a basic simple application where I displaying an image and a text, right, and a button. These are like the three basic things you ever see in a UI, right? Text view, image view, and your button, right? These are three basic things you ever see in your UI, right? Okay, so yeah, so that's that, right? That's that. There are some things I want to do, but I think I would rather just, something you guys go and try out, right? You guys will basically just go and try it out. So let's get back to our Android Studio. Okay, so that's basically that. So let's I think we still have time. So let's now get into talking about some more important things. Not really more important things, more like basic best standards and best practices rather. Now, one of the things you need to try to minimize is, there are what we call errors, and there are what we call warnings. Your errors are usually in red, warnings are in yellow. So you can notice like this particular guy here, has what's called a warning, hard coded what text. So when you click this badge for detail, I'm going to click here. So what does it say? It said hard coded string welcome to KodeCamp should use at string what resource. I think we talked about resources like in the last time. So one of the things you should try to avoid is hard coding a text, right? Because you can see hard coding text attribute, hard coding your text attributes directly in your layout files is bad for several reasons. Number one, when creating configuration variations, like configure adjust your portrait mode, landscape mode, you have to repeat the actual text and keep it up to date when making that changes, right? And secondly, the application cannot be translated to other languages by just adding, because think about it, if you just hard coded the text, when you want to if you want your application to display that text in French, right, and you hard coded it, means you don't have to go back to the application, right, and start going to every place I've ever declared that text, right, and start changing it one by one. No, you shouldn't do that. That's why you should store it in a string resource, so that when you make any changes with that string resource, it affects every other place that text is actually what used. So one of the things you should also always do is store your text or your string in a string resource file, right? Also your dimensions, whether it's just your dimensions, also you should create a folder. I'm going to show you, right? So these are just best practices that we're just going to be talking about, right? And these are things I want to see whenever you're building your application. Whenever I'm checking, trust me, I'm going to look out for these things. Best practices. It's something I want people to learn from the onset, from the beginning, right? So that's the first warning talks about this. So how do we fix that, right? How do we fix that? So you can see, so basically how you can fix that, right? It's just well, we kind of actually have to go to, before they usually prefer this fix icon stuff here, but I guess this will actually take us to the XML. But if you right click on that particular warning, you see this show quick fixes, and then you click on extract string resource. So you can see the resource name. You can change the resource name. It gives you a default resource name. What it basically does, it separates whatever it is there by makes everything small letter and separates by underscore. So that gives you an idea of your naming convention. So I could just call this welcome. So that's the name, and then the value is welcome to KodeCamp. So think of it as maps, right? You're mapping something to a value, right? So whenever you're looking for welcome to KodeCamp, all you need to do is call welcome, as a name. So that's that. So you're creating the resource file in the following directory. So which directories? Is it just the values of values 9? So the difference between these two is one is light mode, the other one is dark mode. So you can actually just do for both of them if you want, and then click OK. So you can see that takes that out. The second one, you can see same thing for the button, hard-coded what's text. So we're going to right click, show fixes, extra string resource. So login is fine as a name. You can also just do this, right? And just, it's not compulsory, but you can. And then you have the last one for the image view, image without content or description. So our image is missing a content or description. So one of the things that why this is, it's just a warning, but it's very important. Have you ever tried opening a website, right? And then for some reason, due to network issues, the image doesn't load, but there's an information about that image on the website. Could just tell you, it could just be a text that says an image of this, dependent on whatever the developer puts there, right? In web development, it's called an alt text, like an alternate text, right? So it's just an alternative for a situation where the image doesn't load, so that the user gets to know the kind of image that was supposed to be displayed. Some website you see an image of two persons, or an image, or you see the image. If it's probably a news website, they could actually go as far as saying the image of the president of Nigeria with this. So it's just a description of the image, just in case it does not load, right? So same thing you should also do here. So just going to click on right click, show quick fix, and then set content description, right? And then click on that. So it will set it to what it first of all, what it will do, if you look here, is that it creates that attribute called content description, but it has what it actually gives there is to do, but that's definitely not what we want. So we actually have to go to show quick fix, click that, or we come here. Okay, that's come to this hard coded text, click here, extract string resource. So we don't want to do so. This is the name. I'll just say hero image. The value is just hero image, right? That's just the text. So you see, we have cleared out every warning we have. So it means that when we want to upload the application to Play Store, Google is not going to shout, because we are obeying every instruction. We are following the principles and what everything they have set, right? So that's something I needed to talk about, right? So since we still have time, I'm just gonna, so let's just get into talking about the, looking at it from the XML point of view. Now, everything we have actually done here, everything we have done here is also represented in what's an extensible markup language, right? Yes, that's XML, right? So when I split this, you see that everything we did here, this is the code for it, right? This is actually the code for everything that we did. And the interesting thing about XML is that it is readable. See, if you just follow this, just follow the literal meaning, right? A typical example is your image view. You can see android.id. So this Android is, we call it a namespace, right? We call it a namespace. We'll talk about that much later. So we have this XMLNS. These are namespaces, right? So it's in these namespaces that we are able to access these attributes from the Android. So all these are just part of your SDK and all those stuff. So typical example, like you can see Android.ID. What does it mean? We are calling the ID attribute, and then we are giving it an ID. You can see this layout width. The width of the layout is 300 dp. Layout height, the height of the image view. Layout margin top, that's the top of the margin top of the layout, right? From wherever. So since we're margin top, so from the top of the image view to like the top of the parent, right? So it's just something you can read. Now for the constraints, you can just see it. Layout constraint end, right? Which is this one, to the end of what parent, that's this constraint, right? Bias means we have actually moved it a bit. So there's a horizontal bias. It's like it's kind of tilted a bit towards the horizontal distance. So if I just click that out, right? You can take that out. You can see constraint start of the image view to start of the parent, which is this other one here. So it's just something that is readable, right? You get used to them as you're using them. This SRC compact was, it's just when you want to actually give the image view an actual image. So the SRC is source, right? That's basically what is source. So the source, where's the image actually? Where is it stored, right? So you can see KodeCamp_hero is stored at a file called drawable, right? And then this content description, attributes, right? It's basically just readable. So I talked about extracting resources, so storing stuff. So yeah, even your dimensions, right? So you can see we're having 8 dp here, so we shouldn't hard code it, right? So I'm just going to double click to highlight it, and then just do alt enter, alt enter, or you can just right click, show context actions, and you can see extract dimension resource. So I want to store dimensions somewhere, right? So that if for some reason I want to make any changes, I'll just make it in one file and it affects every other place. So they have given us a format here, which is _36D. That's fine, but I like to do dimen_36dp. right? I kind of like that to be my, you know, it's just personal, right? So click OK, right? So with this, I can just call this anywhere I need a 36 dp. I'll just what call it, right? Do I have 36 dp somewhere? No, I don't think just there. So here that I have 8 dp. So Alt Enter, extract, just paste this here, but change this to 8, right? And then click Enter. So I can just copy that, use it here, right? Okay. So for SP, right, you can still do the same thing, but since text is for text, not really dimensions, so I'm going to just say text size 24, right? That's just my own. I can still do 24 SP, right? Or I just say text size 24. So whenever I need it, right, I'll just you know, call that. So you need to, these are just best practices, right? So we don't have a 24 dp, just you know, do that, right? So you can notice there are two ways there. I didn't actually put in my own dimen, but it's just still pointed to. This shows that it create, because it definitely just create a folder somewhere where you can actually access all these dimensions. You can see it in the resource here. Every dimension that we created, you can see it what's here, right? It's created that dimension what file for us, right? So even the strings we created, you can see them here, right? Every string we was stored. This for the night mode, right? I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so just for the sake of the class, I'll just stop there. You can actually just, whenever you're doing yours, you make sure to, you know, extract all those things. Another thing you should also extract is your color, right? Is your color. Like for example, this guy, I could want this to, you know, you can actually extract this color, and then I'll name it primary, or just say my primary, because I'm trying to not use words that are already defined in the Android SDK. Okay, my primary color, and just click OK. So in case I want to make changes to my primary color, I don't have to go to every place I wrote those code. I'll just go to one place, which is, if I control click, which is here. So any changes I make here. So if I decide to change this to, let's say, this color, if I go back here, you see it has changed. It will change this guy to blue, which is this, right? But imagine if I left it with the hexadecimal and I have it in 50 places. I'll not have to be going one place at a time and be changing it to whatever. But when you store it, you can change it just one place and it reflects everywhere. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? Right. I don't know if you have any questions so far. Friday is going to also be we'll get into more complex stuff on Friday. But for now, I just want to stay on UI, right? Because I'll also drop your task tomorrow. Yes. So you can start working on it, but just want to stay on UI today. Okay, so if there's any question, you can just drop it on the chat, right? If there's none, let's just see how much more we can cover. Okay, so that was basically for best practices, right? Yeah, that was basically for best practices. So I think that's basically where I'll draw the curtain. I don't want to overload us, right? I have a pattern. So of course I'm going to give you a task where I'll give you a UI to design, right? And then you try to implement that. Okay, so a few things you can do in your text, right, is, so like I said, these things you can also design it from the XML parts, right? All you just need to have an idea of what you want to do, what attributes you're looking for. If you can have an idea, just try typing and searching it, right? And please, another thing I want you to learn is this. IntelliJ has intelligence, is intelligent, right? So when you're typing and you see what you're looking for, just click enter. Click on it and click enter. Don't try to type everything to the end, right? Because a lot of times what you're using will need it kind of needs to import a library. Remember when you wanted to use when you want to get input in Kotlin, you need to import scanner. Good. So but it helps you to auto import it, but you just have to, when you type and see what you need, you click on it. So like a typical example, because it's going to be part of your task. A font, right? Part of the text is that I want to be able to choose my font, right? So there's just by typing FON, I'm seeing font family. So I'll just go there, click on it, right? And then choose a font, right? I don't have any here. Okay, but they are the ones that comes by default, right? But you can add yours. I'll show you how to add. Let's just say I choose cursive as the font, so you can see this is cursive. Oh, it's a very uninteresting font, actually. Let's just use a sans serif black, right? Okay, good. So, but you can add your own fonts, right? So just go to attributes, right? Search. Remember, we are in text, right? So search for font, right? Come down, click here, click on this. There's this, this little, I don't know what I call it, shape or something. It's where it will highlight and show you pick a resource. So you click there. Okay. Yeah, you basically don't have any fonts available, right? So you can click on this plus icon, font resource file if you have one, or you click on more fonts. So here there are a lot of fonts you can actually just download, right? You can just download. One of my favorites is Poppins. So I'm just going to click on Poppins, and you wait a bit, right? For it to show here, because you have different versions, right? So you can create a downloadable font, right? So the ones that someone else download, or you can just add it straight to your project. So if I click on create a downloadable font, right? So it downloads this Poppins thing for me, the thin one. And then you get to see it here. Or if you check, follow my cursor, you can't, see it's now a font here that's been added. But I'm not sure I want the thing. So I'm just going to go back there. Poppins. So let's use medium. Now this is another one, so you can just add it to your project, right? And then click OK. So I can just come back here and change this font. Okay, hand is raised. That's Chinazom. Okay, go ahead. So the name of my font is Poppins. I'll just start typing, and then I'll see it. So I'll just click enter. So yeah, that's my font, Poppins. I love Poppins. Okay, Chinazom, go ahead. You have a question.
Okay. First of all, today class is very, very. I see my head cannot even. What they teach is very small, but it's very big in my head. A
Oh,
lot of
that's right. No,
explanation, yeah,
we are
and
stopping soon.
and another thing again, you are kind of fast. Though I will still go and watch the video on YouTube to actually get everything right. But we are kind of fast. And secondly, I wanted to know. I was trying to connect to run my own interface. I've downloaded the Android. I'm going to run my interface. It was telling me no device is connected. I should connect device. So I was like, if you can show us how we can connect device, to see the interface that we run, like once more. So,
Oh, okay. So that you've connected your phone, right? Your
No,
phone.
I've not connected. I could not connect. Like it was telling me to scan something. So I was
Yes.
like,
Okay.
what am I going to scan?
Okay. So the very first thing is this, right? Okay. But by the way, I think this. I'll just stop here, and so I think maybe this so that you guys can actually accumulate whatever. Okay. So excuse me. I'm going to. So first of all, you need to enable USB debugging on your phone. It means your phone has to be in developer mode, right? So you basically have to go to settings, go down to, I think depends on the phone, right? Go to about, and then you look for where you have your build number of your phone, right? Where you have a build number, and then just keep tapping it till it tells you you'll just be seeing like a countdown to developer mode, right? And then once you count down, and it will actually tell you, if you just follow the prompts, it will tell you you've activated developer mode. Then you go back to your settings, just search, most phones have that search functionality. Just search for USB debugging, you see it, and turn it on, right? So once you turn it on, that's when you can now connect your USB phone to your laptop when your Android Studio is open. Another thing is to prompt your phone for a USB debug fingerprint something, right? You have to accept that. But click on there's going to be a small radio button. You just click on it so that you don't have to be accepting it every time. So once you do that and you connect your phone, your Android Studio will show. It will just show here. Let me annotate this. So just show here. Like you can see this. This is my phone, Samsung SMA145F, right? So it will show this, right? So this shows that your phone has actually been, connected, right? But if it is not, like it's basically not. So let me disconnect my phone, right? So I'll just take out the USB and then you can see no devices, right? No what devices. So except your phone can actually, okay, for those who their laptops rather can handle a virtual device, okay, and your laptop will not be slow, you can just go to your device manager, click here to create a virtual device, choose whichever one you want to make use of. I usually use Pixel 3a, right? That has the Play Store icon, so I can actually, use some of the Google tools there, like the Gmail. It's a virtual device, so you can even put your Gmail there and use it and send mail, and it works, right? And then you click on it, and then next, and then you choose, the API level you want. Do you want Android API level of 30, 29 and all the stuff? Do you want Android 11, Android 12, and all the likes? And then you click next, and then you click finish. I'm not going to click finish because I don't want to activate any virtual device on my laptop. It's going to slow it down. Okay, so that's actually how you do that. But I will also drop a resource on the Discord, yes, for that. That will help you to connect your phone, to use your phone as a physical device to test your application. Okay. Chinazam, I don't know if that helps. Okay, is there any other question?
Sorry, you say you should go to about. From about, we locate
Build number. Check, you should have build number somewhere. It depends on
um
devices. So I don't know if you can see
I'm using Redmi.
Redmi. So can't you see anything like build number?
Yeah, I can see Android version, IMU version, and Android security updates, digital
Can you share
backup
if you
and
if you can
restore.
if you can share your screens? I've actually made this better if you can. But I'll just don't worry, since you're using the Redmi, I'll get a resource for you for Redmi.
Okay.
That's not really an issue. I can do that. I'll just send a resource on the um
Okay.
to
Okay.
just
Thanks,
send.
boss.
Any other question?
Thanks, boss.
Any other question? Any other question? Okay, so okay, Chinazam, are you there? Don't know.
Yes, boss. Yes, boss.
Okay. Did you see when you clicked on about phone? Did you see anything like MIUI version?
Yes, I saw it.
Okay, tap on it 7 times.
You are now a developer.
Good. Yeah. Good. Good. So you now go to your settings, right? Go back to your settings. You have a search field in
Yes,
your settings
yes.
now. Good. Just type USB debugging. Just type USB debugging. It will show as you're typing it. You see
I've
USB
seen it.
debugging.
USB
Yeah.
debugging.
Yes. Click on it and
Boy.
enable it.
Oh boy. Wow. USB OEM unlocked. Allow the bootloader to be unlocked.
You clicked on
Simultaneously.
You clicked on USB debugging, right?
Yes.
Yes. Just follow the prompt. Follow whatever
Developer
prompt.
option.
Yes.
Okay, I've seen enable USB debugging.
Good. Okay. Enable that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
now when you connect your USB to your laptop and your Android Studio is up, you will see a pop-up on your phone. It's more like a USB, it's still part of your USB debugging, but it's more like a fingerprint kind of not really fingerprint per se, but basically you're just trying to sync your phone and your system. So there'll be a pop-up. Before you accept, click on the I think Z do not show this again, but there's a small circle you just click on, so it doesn't always ask you for that. You just enable that and then you're good to go. Okay, Oyebola, go ahead. Your hand is raised.
Like the thing
Thank
I've
you.
connected.
Hello?
It's like it have connected.
Okay, Oyebola, go
Hello?
ahead. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, please, I just want to confirm something. I
Yes.
was trying following the step of pairing the device. Please, is it only Android 11 Pro? Because my own device is saying I should to pair an Android 11 plus device. What my Android on my phone is not up to 11. That means I can't do it on my phone.
No, your phone doesn't have to be. Have you enabled is your phone in developer mode already?
No, it's not yet. I
Yeah.
wanted to do, but now saw Android 11 plus. So before I
No, what phone are you using?
it's techno.
If it's techno, it's easy now. Just go to your
Okay, all right.
listen, what's it called? Um it's still setting, it should be about, right? Since it's techno, it should just be
Yes.
about.
No,
Go to settings, either settings,
I will
then
follow the
system,
steps.
it should be system.
Okay.
Go to settings and then I think system and then use that's if you've actually enabled it already. But if you have not enabled it before, then it should be about your phone. Then you should see build number. I think in techno
Build
phones is
number.
build number you should see.
Okay.
Yes, you should.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, and when you click that 7 times, when you click that 7 times, you enable developer mode is now enabled. You now go to your settings, search for USB debugging, and just follow the same process.
All right. Thank you. We'll still be expecting the results.
The thing just connected automatically. Can I share my
Yeah,
screen?
but I'll still drop the resource.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sure. You can share your screen. Let me stop sharing so you can share your screen. Okay, go ahead.
It just connected automatically.
If Glory now, Glory. But let me see. You can share your screen if you want to. Share your screen. Let's see. So what exactly are you sharing? Your laptop?
Yeah, my laptop.
Yeah, it's connected. So that's good now. That's your phone now, Xiaomi.
Yeah.
So if you
how
want
can
to
I see? How can I see that it's running?
Just click on this play button. Hold on.
Yeah, I've clicked on it.
You have
I think it's what it's showing now. It's showing like this now. I think this is it.
Hold on. This I'm trying to get my annotates. Hold on, just give me. Okay, good.
Okay, so that one is screen sharing. Sorry, I thought it's screen.
So see what I want you to click on here. If you can look at my screen, this play button. That's what I want you to click on your Android Studio.
Okay. Wow.
That's to run the application. So
okay.
you can look down here. You see that it is launching.
Yeah.
So hold on. Installation did not succeed. The application could not be installed. Click on retry. Let me find out what exactly the issue is. Okay.
Wow.
So click here. Let's find out. Click on this run. Install field user restricted. Click here. I want to see what exactly that is. So why is it install field user restricted? So probably is there a restriction? Okay, so see what you do. Remove the USB cord and put it back. Then look out for any prompt. Let's try. Let's do that.
Apart from allowing USB debugging, is there any other thing I should click?
No.
I can see USB debugging security setting is off.
No,
Install.
don't worry. Don't worry. It's just that.
Enable Vin attribute is off too.
Can you hear me? Just hold on. It's not
Okay.
that. So I think it's your device. Hold on, let me check. Let's see. It could be a device some stuff, because I think it's a Redmi, it's a device stuff. Okay, so this is what you do. Let's check. I'm just checking actually. I'm checking why it's not going to work. So there are some persons that have gone through this. Okay, so go to your developer options. Okay, where you have that under debugging, where you have that USB debugging. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see.
So you have enabled USB debugging, right?
Yes.
Okay, enable install via USB.
Enabled. You say I should sign into your Zamo account.
To your what?
You say I should sign into my phone account.
Oh, for to install via USB, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you have to do that. So you have to enable install via USB and USB debugging security settings. Those two, you have to enable those two. It's your phone, it's a phone thing. It's a Redmi.
Okay.
It's a Redmi. Listen, I just checked. It's a Redmi
Okay.
stuff. So you have to enable those two before you can actually run that. So those are just another thing you can also do. I think there's a place for MIUI optimization. You can also turn that on. Right? It's just a device thing.
Okay.
Well, I think the major thing is just that install via USB. I think that's just it. I think it's just that stuff.
Let me create my phone account. Let me create an account for my phone.
So just try that and then let me know, right? So that we can I'll check out some resources, right? Like I said, it's a Redmi thing. Oyebola, do you still have any question? Your hand is raised.
Not a question anymore. I just discovered that I've activated my developer option before, but I can't even remember when I did.
You activated your
Developer option.
okay.
Yes.
But are you good? Are you good now?
No, what I'm saying, I didn't even know when I did it, so I
Okay,
can't
okay,
remember.
okay, okay.
So
Yeah, I
I
think
was
I had a
following the
friend who
steps
has
now.
done
Now saw
that.
that they said,
I
all
I had a
right,
friend
I'll
who had
follow the
I don't
steps. I
even
was
know how
following.
he was wondering how he even enabled itself. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
So I was following the conversation with China, so thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
But if I
that's
had any encounter, I will surely reach out.
sure, sure, sure. If you have any issues, just reach
Thank
out
you.
on the Discord. I'm back now. I'm much better, so I'll actually try as much as possible to reply messages on time. Yeah, as I
Thank
see
you.
it. Okay. So I think this is where we're gonna call it night. So I'm gonna make sure I upload this video this night, right? I'll make sure I upload it this night so you guys can quickly just head back to it and finish up whatever it is that is left. So thank you guys very much for staying to the end, and I'll see you in our next class. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good night.
Thank you, boss.
Yeah.